You're watching this on your phone right now. In 3 of the countries on this list, that phone in your hand is the single biggest reason you might not make it home. Not a knife, not bad luck, not a wrong turn at night. Just the fact that you're holding a $1,000 device in a place where the average person earns $2 a day. We've ranked 13 countries that have crossed the line, from dangerous into something else entirely. We'll show you the place where children are handed rifles before they learn to read. The country where a human being can be auctioned off for less than a used smartphone. And if the first few entries on this list just make your skin crawl a little, the final 3 are something different. They're places where the social contract has been completely dissolved, where civilization didn't just fail, it packed its bags and left. The first half of this list will make you think twice before booking that off-the-beaten-path adventure. The final 3 will make you grateful you're watching this from a couch. Ready? Let's go. Number 13. Mexico. You already have a picture of Mexico in your head, and it's a good one. Turquoise water, ancient pyramids, street tacos at midnight, mariachi floating through warm air. The travel brochures sell this dream hard, and honestly, it's not entirely a lie. The beaches are real, the food is extraordinary, the culture is genuinely one of the richest on the planet. But here's what the brochures quietly leave out. That dream exists inside a fence. The moment you step beyond the perimeter of your all-inclusive resort, you enter a completely different country, one that operates under wartime rules. Outside the tourist corridors of places like Cancun or Los Cabos, entire states are controlled not by the federal government, but by cartels. Sinaloa, Tamaulipas, Michoacán. In these regions, the police often serve a purely decorative function. Sometimes they moonlight for the other side entirely. The highways here aren't traveled by tour buses, they're patrolled by narco tanks, improvised armored vehicles welded together in backyard workshops, with steel plating thick enough to stop rifle rounds and gun ports cut for heavy caliber weapons. This isn't movie props, this is the daily commute for the people who run entire states. For tourists, the biggest threat isn't a direct attack. It's being in the wrong place when 2 factions decide to settle a dispute, which can happen in the middle of a busy street, turning a normal afternoon into a battlefield in seconds. Locals have developed a survival reflex. The sound of gunshots means you hit the ground. No hesitation, no looking around. Foreigners stand there confused, and that hesitation has a cost. Then there's the phenomenon known as express kidnapping. You get into what looks like a normal cab. It takes you not to your hotel, but to an ATM. You're politely asked, at gunpoint, to empty every card you have. That's the best case scenario. Mexico receives tens of millions of tourists every year, and most leave with great photos and no incidents. But the line between the postcard and the war zone is one wrong turn on your GPS. Think twice before that solo road trip through the countryside. Number 12. South Africa. South Africa is one of the most genuinely stunning places on Earth. 2 oceans meet at the Cape. The wildlife is incomparable. Cape Town is regularly voted one of the most beautiful cities in the world. And then there's Johannesburg. Joburg has a crime problem so severe that it's reshaped the entire culture of the city. Not just the statistics, the architecture, the psychology, the daily rituals of survival. Let's start with the roads. Local drivers in Johannesburg regularly run red lights at night. Not because they're reckless, because stopping your car at a dark intersection makes you a stationary target for carjacking. South Africa has a specific term for it, hijacking. And it's so common that official road signs in certain areas literally warn you that you're entering a high-risk carjacking zone. The government has given up trying to stop it. Now they just label it. In the late 1990s, the threat had gotten so bad that a South African inventor developed and legally sold a device called the blaster. It was a flamethrower fitted under the chassis of a civilian car. Activated by the driver, it would shoot jets of fire at anyone attempting to pull you from your vehicle. It was eventually banned. But the fact that it existed and was commercially popular tells you everything you need to know about the level of fear people were living with. Today's defenses are slightly more measured: electrified razor wire, panic rooms, private armed response teams. South Africa has more private security personnel than police and military combined. Wealthy neighborhoods look less like residential areas and more like fortified compounds. Every wall is topped with live current. Every gate has an armed guard. The rule for tourists is simple and non-negotiable. Your phone never comes out on the street, ever. Not for maps, not for photos, not for a quick text. The moment that screen lights up, you've become a target. In some areas, people have been killed for less than a pair of sneakers. South Africa is one of the most rewarding travel experiences on the planet, if you're careful, informed, and never for 1 second assume you're somewhere safe. Number 11. Nigeria is Africa's largest economy. It has a booming tech sector, a world-class film industry. Nollywood produces more movies annually than Hollywood, and a culture that has influenced music, fashion, and food across the globe. It also has one of the most sophisticated kidnapping industries on Earth. If you arrive in Nigeria as a Westerner, an oil executive, an NGO worker, a journalist, your skin color functions as a price tag. Not metaphorically, literally. Criminal networks actively research targets, identify their employer, estimate their salary, and calculate what a company or family would pay to get them back. Numbers can reach into the hundreds of thousands. Foreign oil workers in the Niger Delta don't travel like normal people. They live in walled compounds that look like military bases. When they leave, they travel in armored convoys with armed police escorts. A casual dinner out isn't a spontaneous decision. It's a logistics operation requiring 48 hours of planning. Beyond the organized kidnapping networks, Lagos itself, the largest city in Africa, operates on a level of controlled chaos that's disorienting even for experienced travelers. The slum district of Makoko is sometimes called the Venice of Africa, a vast community of homes built on stilts over black water, connected by narrow canals. Police don't enter. Law inside is administered by secret societies with names like the Black Axe, known for a level of violence that makes most gangs look restrained. Nigeria is a country of extraordinary contradictions, brilliant, creative, full of life, and for the uninitiated foreigner, almost impossible to navigate safely without deep local knowledge and serious security infrastructure. If you're not an oil magnate with a private security detail, there is simply no reason to be here. Number 10. Venezuela. 20 years ago, Venezuela was the richest country in South America. Per capita income was higher than Spain. Caracas was called the Paris of Latin America. Middle-class Venezuelans flew to Miami on weekends for shopping trips. Then the economy was systematically destroyed. Today, the national currency is worth less than the paper it's printed on. This is not a figure of speech. Artisans in Caracas weave handbags and hats out of stacked Bolivar banknotes because the paper itself is more practical than the currency's exchange value. To buy a single chicken, you may need to carry 3 kilograms of cash by weight. The hyperinflation created a poverty crisis. The poverty crisis created a crime crisis. And Caracas has spent years competing for the title of the most violent capital city on Earth. When people have no legal way to feed their families, the rules change. Muggings here don't come with a warning. No one shows you a knife and asks for your wallet. More likely, 2 guys pull up next to you on a motorbike and skip straight to the part where they take everything you have. Violence isn't a last resort here, it's the opening move. The country also has a unique and terrifying feature: the colectivos. These are armed paramilitary motorcycle gangs that nominally support the government, but in practice control entire neighborhoods. They are the law, the court, and the execution squad in one. Official law enforcement doesn't engage with them. If you stumble into their territory, no embassy on Earth can help you. For tourists, if you have American dollars, the only currency that actually holds value here, you are a walking target the moment you reveal it. Pay for anything in USD, and everyone in the room knows you have more. Venezuela is the starkest possible example of how fast a prosperous society can unravel, and how dangerous it is to be visibly wealthy in a place where millions of people have forgotten what meat tastes like. Number 9. Brazil. Rio de Janeiro is one of the most visually spectacular cities in the world. The famous Christ the Redeemer statue looks out over a city that feels like it was designed to be photographed. Sugarloaf Mountain, Copacabana, azure water, lush hills, world-class hotels. Now look up from the beach. On those green hillsides, climbing over each other in dense labyrinths of brick and corrugated iron, are the favelas. And they're not just poor neighborhoods, they're sovereign territories, separate countries within the city with their own laws, their own tax system, and their own armies. The favelas are controlled by drug factions, most prominently Comando Vermelho, the Red Command. Inside these territories, Brazilian law does not exist. What exists instead is the code of whoever holds the guns this week. The streets inside are barely wide enough for one person. The sky disappears under a tangle of illegal power cables, and at the entrances you will see teenagers, 15, 16 years old, in flip-flops and shorts, casually holding AR-15s or gold-plated AK-47s. This is their job. They're sentries, they have radios, and they report every unfamiliar face. Here is the specific danger for tourists. GPS doesn't know which streets are inside favela territory. Navigation apps will happily route you through the middle of an active cartel zone to save you 10 minutes of traffic. Drivers have turned the wrong corner and found themselves facing a dozen gun barrels within seconds. Inside these territories, an unknown car means one of two things: undercover police or a rival gang. Neither response involves asking questions first. Rio is extraordinary. The energy is unlike anywhere on Earth. But curiosity here is punished more harshly than almost anywhere else. That beautiful hill in your Instagram photo has a war happening on it. Number 8. Not long ago, El Salvador held an unwanted world record, the highest murder rate per capita on the planet. The country was held hostage by two mega-gangs, MS-13, the Mara Salvatrucha, and their sworn enemies, Barrio 18. If you've ever seen a news story about heavily tattooed Latin American gang members, the imagery almost certainly came from here. The visual identity of these gangs is genuinely shocking. Tattoos aren't fashion here. They're a resume written on skin. Every mark on the face and hands tells a specific story. Crimes committed, enemies killed, status earned. Spider webs on the elbows, 3 dots on the hand, Gothic letters across the forehead. These are not people who can change their identity and walk away. The code is permanent, and so is the membership. For years, the country was carved into invisible zones. Residents of one neighborhood couldn't cross into the next block, controlled by a rival faction without risking their lives. The gangs taxed everyone: shop owners, bus drivers, teachers, elderly women selling tortillas on the sidewalk. The fee was called renta, pay it, or face consequences that were immediate and irreversible. Then the government launched a war on the gangs unlike anything in modern democratic history. They built the largest prison in the Western Hemisphere, the CECOT, capacity 40,000 inmates. Images from inside circulated globally and looked like scenes from a dystopian film. Vast warehouse-sized cells, thousands of shaved-headed, tattooed men crouched in rows, moved at a run with their heads down under the watch of heavily armed guards. No mattresses, no visitation, no recreation. A concrete box designed for permanent social removal. El Salvador's streets are quieter now, but it's the quiet of a country under military occupation. Soldiers with heavy weapons patrol the cities. Locals still speak in lowered voices, worried the old times might return, or that they'll be swept up in a raid where no one stops to ask questions. El Salvador exchanged one extreme for another. Whether that trade was worth it is a question the country is still trying to answer. Number 7. Libya. 15 years ago, Libya had the best roads in Africa, free healthcare, an ambitious national irrigation project designed to turn desert into farmland. it was one of the most prosperous countries on the continent. Today, the international airport in Tripoli is an open-air graveyard of burned aircraft. Luxury hotels that once hosted diplomats and oil executives now serve as sniper nests and militia headquarters. The country has no effective central government, no unified police force, and no functioning legal system outside the capital, and even there, authority is limited to a few contested blocks. Since 2011, Libya has fractured into a patchwork of competing militias, tribal warlords, and foreign-backed factions. The most common symbol of power is a Toyota pickup truck with a heavy machine gun welded into the bed. These technicals roam the desert and the city alike. The line of control shifts daily. There are no front lines, only zones of temporary dominance. But the most disturbing thing about modern Libya, the fact that genuinely strains credulity for anyone living in the 21st century, is this: active slave markets have been documented here. Libya sits at the bottleneck of African migration to Europe. Hundreds of thousands of people from sub-Saharan Africa transit through Libya every year trying to reach the Mediterranean coast. Many are intercepted, imprisoned, and sold. Journalists and human rights investigators have documented auction-style sales happening in parking lots and garages. A healthy adult man has been valued at roughly $400, less than a used smartphone. For any foreign visitor, Libya is a black hole. Legal entry is nearly impossible. Illegal entry is functionally suicidal. Your kidnapping value here could be traded for a can of fuel or a box of ammunition. Even diplomats travel exclusively in armored convoys. Libya is the sharpest possible reminder that civilization is not a permanent condition. Remove law and order, and something older and uglier fills the space almost immediately. Number 6. Myanmar. A few years ago, Myanmar was one of the most coveted destinations in Southeast Asia. Travel photographers couldn't get enough of it. Thousands of ancient Buddhist pagodas rising from the plains of Bagan, hot air balloons drifting over them at sunrise, sacred temples, untouched villages, monks in saffron robes on misty mountain paths. Then came the coup. In February 2021, the military seized power and the country became overnight a closed zone. What has unfolded since then is something genuinely unprecedented. A high-tech insurgency fought with improvised weapons in a tropical jungle. Against an army equipped with tanks and fighter jets, ordinary citizens, students, doctors, teachers, IT workers fled into the forests and formed resistance militias. Because conventional weapons were impossible to source, they began printing them. Literally, 3D printed firearms assembled from plans downloaded off the internet, tested in jungle clearings by men in Nike sneakers. This is not science fiction. The videos exist. Myanmar is also being called the first war in history where commercial drones, the kind you can buy at an electronics store, have been systematically deployed as weapons on both sides. A DJI quadcopter carries a grenade over a checkpoint and drops it. This technology is now normalized in the conflict. In cities like Yangon, the threat to a foreign visitor is different but equally serious. Military checkpoints will stop you and demand you unlock your phone. If they find a photo of a protest, a roadblock, even a VPN app, you will be arrested. Foreigners are presumed to be spies or journalists until proven otherwise. And in the border regions near Thailand, an entirely different nightmare has emerged. Towns like Shui Koko have become hubs of large-scale digital fraud, massive compounds, casinos, office blocks, warehouses enclosed in razor wire, people lured from across Asia with promises of well-paying office jobs. Once inside, their passports are confiscated and they're forced to work as online scammers around the clock. Private armed security enforces the perimeter. Escape is not an option. Myanmar is a country of staggering beauty. Right now, you can only admire it through a screen. Number 5. Honduras doesn't get the media attention of Mexico or Brazil, but per capita, it has spent years near the top of the global homicide rankings. The country sits at the intersection of two forces: the transit route for cocaine moving from South America to the United States, and the territorial wars of gangs like MS-13 and Barrio 18, which imported themselves here after being deported from American cities in the 1990s. Cities like San Pedro Sula and Tegucigalpa are divided into invisible sectors. Locals know which streets belong to which faction. Crossing the wrong line is not a theoretical risk, it's a death sentence with a short lag time. The economic engine of this system is extortion, known locally as la renta, the rent. Everyone pays: restaurant owners, bus drivers, taxi drivers, street vendors, pharmacies, bakeries. If you refuse to pay or miss a payment, the consequences are swift and final. Entire commercial districts have been shuttered not by market forces, but by gang taxation. Businesses simply couldn't survive the overhead of paying protection to multiple factions simultaneously. The architecture of Honduras reflects this reality. Everything that can be walled is walled. Windows are barred floor to ceiling, including on upper floors. A fast food restaurant here is guarded better than a European bank. Guards with pump-action shotguns stand at the entrance to grocery stores. Public buses are a specific danger. Armed men board. One blocks the driver. The rest walk the aisle collecting everything of value. It happens so frequently that regular commuters now carry a decoy wallet, a small amount of cash in an easily accessible pocket, enough to satisfy a robber without revealing where the real money is hidden. The value of a human life in Honduras has been priced by the market. A hired killer can be contracted here for the equivalent of $50. Honduras has extraordinary natural beauty and some of the most significant Maya ruins in the Americas. Its people are, by almost any account, warm and resilient. They're also hostages to a system they didn't build and can't escape. Number 4. Democratic Republic of Congo. Look at the phone you're using to watch this. The battery inside it almost certainly contains cobalt. The DRC holds roughly 70% of the world's known cobalt reserves. Every electric vehicle, every laptop, every smartphone on the planet is partially powered by material pulled from this country's soil. Now picture how it's extracted. Not with automated machinery and safety protocols. Thousands of people waist-deep in toxic red mud, using hand tools or their bare hands to dig for ore. No protective equipment, no medical care, no formal wages, entire family units working together. And among them, children as young as 7, carrying sacks of ore that outweigh them instead of attending school. Cobalt dust settles in their lungs. There's no stopping because there's no alternative. This is the supply chain that powers the modern world, and it sits at the center of one of the longest, most complex armed conflicts of the 21st century. Dozens of armed factions compete for control of the mineral-rich territories. They fund themselves through taxation of mining sites and through outright seizure of deposits. The violence has displaced millions of people and claimed lives on a scale that rarely makes Western headlines. The national park at Virunga is home to the last significant population of mountain gorillas on Earth. It is one of the most breathtaking environments on the planet. The road to get there is one of the most dangerous stretches of pavement in existence. Tourist convoys are ambushed regularly. Over 200 park rangers have been killed in the past 2 decades protecting the park and the tourists visiting it. In the cities, police are less a protection force than an additional extortion layer. In the countryside, there is no law. A teenager with a Kalashnikov manning a rope across a dirt road is as authoritative a legal institution as exists in many regions. The DRC is the starkest possible illustration of the gap between the world's consumption and the human cost of producing it. Number 3. Somalia. We've crossed into the final 3. From here, the word dangerous stops being adequate. Somalia. Most people's reference point is the movie Captain Phillips, the true story of a cargo ship captain taken hostage by Somali pirates in 2009. That film, as intense as it is, barely scratches the surface. At its peak, Somali piracy was a venture capital enterprise. Fishing villages pooled money to fund hijacking operations, buying fuel, weapons, and boats, and then took percentage returns when the ransom was paid. A single successful seizure of a commercial tanker could net millions of dollars. Insurance premiums for vessels transiting the Gulf of Aden tripled. The global shipping industry spent hundreds of millions of dollars rerouting ships thousands of miles out of their way to avoid a strip of coastline controlled by men in speedboats with RPGs. International naval forces have largely suppressed the piracy. At sea, on land, things have gotten worse. Mogadishu, the capital, was once a jewel of the Indian Ocean, Italian colonial architecture, white sand beaches, a functioning cosmopolitan culture. Today, it is 30 years deep into a civil war and currently under the effective control of Al-Shabaab, an extremist organization that bans football, music, cinema, and Western haircuts. Their worldview is simple. Any foreigner is a spy, an enemy of the faith, or a ransom opportunity. Usually all three simultaneously. Getting from the airport to a hotel in Mogadishu requires hiring a private armed convoy. One vehicle with a heavy machine gun in front, your armored car in the middle, another vehicle with gunmen behind. Even this arrangement provides no guarantees because the city's primary threat is unpredictability. Al-Shabaab pioneered a specific tactic for attacking hotels. First, a vehicle packed with explosives rams the gate. Once the perimeter is breached, gunmen rush through to take hostages. Every serious hotel in the city is therefore built like a medieval fortress, 4-meter concrete blast walls, sandbags, sniper positions, zigzag vehicle barriers to prevent a car from building speed. You eat in a bunker. You sleep listening for sirens. You do not go outside without a plan that accounts for every possible scenario. Somalia is what happens to a society when law disappears and the only remaining language is force. Number 2. Central African Republic. For most people, CAR is just an acronym in a news alert they scroll past. For anyone who has actually been there, it sounds like a verdict. The CAR is a ghost state. It appears on maps. It has a flag and a national anthem. In reality, it is a vast territory of absolute lawlessness where the government controls the capital and the road to the airport, and not much else. Everything beyond that is feudal territory, organized by whoever has the most weapons. The country's history is soaked in darkness. In the 1970s, it was ruled by Jean Bedel Bokassa, a military dictator who declared himself emperor and spent a quarter of the country's annual budget on his coronation, including a golden throne shaped like an eagle. He is remembered not for the extravagance, but for the persistent allegations documented by French investigators that he participated in the massacre of school children and engaged in acts of cannibalism against political enemies. The empire is gone. The atmosphere it left behind is not. Today, the CAR is also a testing ground for foreign mercenaries. Private military contractors, speaking in foreign languages, riding in armored vehicles, guard mineral extraction sites across the country. The rules of engagement for these forces are not publicly known. The consequences of getting too close with a camera near a convoy in the wrong area are: outside the capital Bangui, the roads are controlled by improvised checkpoints every 5 to 10 kilometers, a rope strung across the road, a group of teenagers carrying weapons larger than themselves, and no coherent authority behind them. They are often chemically altered. They demand payment. Negotiation doesn't work here. Logic doesn't work here. The wrong gesture, the wrong word, the wrong silence can end a conversation permanently. There are no embassies in the interior. There is no cell signal. There is no rescue operation coming. The CAR is where civilization's failures accumulate at their most extreme. A place where extraordinary mineral wealth has produced nothing but generations of compounding violence, and where the only currency that never loses value is an AK-47. Number 1. Haiti. We've reached the top. If everything before this was dangerous, this is different. This is what happens after danger has finished its work and something older has taken over. Haiti is not a country with a high crime rate. Haiti is a country where the concept of a functioning state has collapsed, not theoretically, not gradually, but completely in real time, while the world watched. Right now, as you watch this, the capital Port-au-Prince is approximately 80% controlled by armed gangs. Not neighborhoods, not districts, 80% of the entire capital city. The most powerful of these factions is the G9 family and allies, led by a man known as Barbecue. He was, until recently, a police officer. The nickname is not ironic. Videos circulating online purport to document what he and his associates have done to rivals and perceived enemies. The content is not something I'll describe in detail. What I will say is that it involves fire, and it does not involve quick deaths. In early 2024, a coalition of gangs coordinated a simultaneous assault on Haiti's two main prisons. In a single night, over 4,000 inmates, murderers, rapists, gang enforcers were freed. The police didn't hold the line, they ran. Police stations were burned. Armored vehicles were captured. Gang members now cruise the streets in police trucks, celebrating. The acting prime minister was unable to return to his own country. His plane couldn't land because gangs were shooting at the airport. This is not hyperbole, this is the news report. Port-au-Prince today, streets blocked by burning tire barricades, black smoke blocking out the sun, automatic weapons fire audible around the clock. No electricity, no water. Hospitals closed because doctors are being kidnapped from their wards. People do not leave their homes in daylight if they can avoid it. There is no international airport. It has been shut down under fire. The seaport has been looted. Diplomatic evacuations were conducted at night by military helicopter under special operations cover, the same way they evacuate war zones. Because that's what this is. Haiti is not a warning sign. It's not a cautionary tale. It's the thing the cautionary tales are about. It's the end state, the thing you get when every system fails simultaneously, when outside help doesn't arrive in time, and when the people with the guns decide there are no more rules. So here's the question. You've just visited 13 countries. Some of them, with careful planning and serious security resources, can still be traveled at extreme caution. A few of them cannot be safely entered by anyone without a private army. And one of them is currently a place where the rule of law doesn't just not exist. It's being actively hunted down and burned. Here's what I want to know. Which of these countries would you last 24 hours in for $1 million? No security detail, no embassy contacts, just you, whatever you can carry, and 24 hours on the clock. Drop your answer in the comments. I'll be reading every single one. If this video made you look at the world a little differently, give it a like. It genuinely helps more people find this content. Subscribe if you want to go deeper into the places the travel brochures don't cover. Stay safe and stay curious carefully.